Mr. Robot is a show that, for whatever reason, no one seems to talk about or have seen. As I browse YouTube, I barely ever see videos talking about the show or breaking down the seasons, analysing in depth the characters and themes that I see for so many other shows. Just like my last video on the OA, another show that no one seems to be watching, I will attempt to explain why you should watch Mr. Robot and why I feel it is the perfect TV show. As a disclaimer, yes, I am aware that the show continually wins Golden Globes and other awards, and that Rami Malek is a highly acclaimed actor from his work on Mr. Robot and also the hit film Bohemian Rhapsody, as well as the once popular Christian Slater, who at one time or another was a pretty big star. So I cannot say in the slightest that the show is underrated, because it's simply not the case. What is the case is that people always talk about the likes of Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad as if they were the be-all and end-all, when Mr. Robot is over in the corner being overlooked by the unwashed masses. Okay, enough setup, let's begin. Mr. Robot is a show that is incredibly topical in this day and age, a time when the gap between rich and poor is widening, society is becoming more and more isolated despite the changes in technology, corporations have immense power over government, drug addiction is on the rise, and society is polarised across the board. We follow Elliot Alderson, who is an introverted drug addict who struggles with social interactions. By day he works for a computer security firm, and by night hacks strangers to find out what makes them tick. He is enlisted by Mr. Robot, aka Christian Slater, to join a hacking group called F Society that is trying to bring down the largest conglomerate in the world called E Corp, which is something akin to Apple or Google. E Corp controls most of the world's debt, and if they can destroy them, they can destroy all records of debt and free everyone. Well, in theory. This video will contain minor spoilers from Season 1, so fast forward through if you don't want things ruined. Unfortunately, and I think this is why it can be hard to get people interested in the plot, is that Elliot's condition makes him incredibly fascinating, and to tell people exactly what makes him special is to ruin at least one massive reveal from Season 1. I will, however, ruin that in an effort to persuade you, so this is your last warning. Are you ready? The hook is that Elliot and Mr. Robot are one and the same. However, we don't find this out until a Fight Club inspired scene. Elliot comes to the realization that Mr. Robot is in fact him, or at least a figment of his imagination. We also find out that Elliot's alter ego takes the form of his dad, who died of cancer working for E Corp, hence his hate of the company. Honestly, when I first watched that scene, I got chills. It's because it is hard these days to fool people. Especially when, we've grown up watching things like The Sixth Sense, Fight Club, and a few other films that have done similar reveals. But Mr. Robot manages many twists that come out of the blue, hitting you like a right hook, and making you question what else will be in store. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the tip of the iceberg of Elliot's mental state, as through the episodes we, the viewer, begin to realise perhaps he's not the reliable narrator we thought. Important details that we assume he must be telling the truth are thrown at our faces down the track as lies, and in a strange twist, both the viewer and Elliot are both surprised due to his faulty memory or unwillingness to remember. His drug addiction to dull the pain of his immense loneliness is a hard thing to watch at times, as well as his trouble communicating with his colleagues who try to include him. Is really interesting to watch. He addresses the viewer directly, asking us questions that he knows we can't answer. Oftentimes he relates his problems in life or people's behaviour to that of a computer. He is one of the most compelling protagonists in any medium that I have come across. I would easily place him up there with Walter White from Breaking Bad as one of the all-time most complex and interesting characters from a TV show. He is in essence a personification of a small percentage of our society that is often forgotten or ignored. The depressed, the anxious introvert, the socially isolated, the one who sees behind the curtain, so to speak, or thinks they do. Throughout the seasons, of which there are 4, we question Elliot's choices. So too do his friends, who start to question whether the perceived greater good is worth all the short-term damage that he is inadvertently causing. I could go on. His character is one that is so well written, acted, and realised that a whole video on him would probably still not suffice. And the best part is that virtually all the characters in this show are so fully fleshed out that I would only be scratching the tip of the iceberg. However, for time's sake, let's continue. Mr. Robot is a visual masterpiece, hands down one of the most visually interesting shows to watch as far as shot composition and editing is concerned. Characters are often framed off-centre, typically near the very right or left-hand side of the screen, perhaps even the bottom left or right corner. Very rare is it for the camera to be fully centred on the subject. I've heard it said that it is used to mimic the feeling of anxiety or awkwardness Elliot feels. His view is skewed and uncomfortable. Perhaps this is true. I do like the interpretation, whether or not it's true, but it still gives the show a visually distinct look that is unmistakable. This visual style is a hallmark of Sam Esmail, the creator and director. Similarly, he likes to film scenes top-down, showing off the geometric shapes of tables and chairs, or character positions that are so creative and unusual that they give the show a fresh style. The sound is another massive plus. A synth soundtrack, which is fairly popular lately in a lot of shows, but it goes well with the computer hacking vibes of the show, at times pulsating intense scenes or ambiently playing in the background, giving it an almost Blade Runner feel. On the other hand, licensed tracks are used to great effect, often during opening scenes, or music that is non-diegetic, transitioning into diegetic sound or vice versa. I think a technique that is cool as hell when done right. When both audio and visual flair are combined, the show stands head and shoulders above the majority of shows on TV, as well as most movies, which I feel shows the love and passion that all those who worked on the show managed to maintain through all the episodes. Some other standout episodes attempt the most impressive single-take illusion, where the camera looks as though it's filming uninterrupted the whole episode. While cuts and filming are cleverly hidden, it's still an impressive technique to pull off on a TV show, and adds to the technical prowess on offer. I think another tense episode also had no dialogue spoken by any characters during a large portion of the episode, which was kind of novel and pretty cool. This sort of weirdness makes the show stand out from the standard shot, reverse shot, flat angle, procedural drama we are often spoon-fed. As mentioned, the supporting cast are just as compelling as Elliot. Now, I won't go into too much detail, but here's a rundown of some of the characters that are some of my favourites. So Darlene is a hacker that is also part of F Society, and she's pretty cool. I'm going to hit you with another mild spoiler from Season 1, so get ready. Okay, so we find out partway through Season 1 she is Elliot's sister, which in hindsight, when you re-watch it, makes a lot of sense. Having a similar level of hatred towards E-Corp, she also has an on and off again boyfriend who has ties to a hacking syndicate in China called the Dark Army, who may or may not have government leadership. Her arc throughout the show is very up and down, and pretty damn compelling to watch her grow and all the hardships she experiences through all 4 seasons. Yeah, definitely a very interesting character. Tyrell Wellick has to be one of the best characters in the show. He is essentially Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, or at least that's how he comes across when we first meet him. There's more to him than meets the eye, and although I feel he may have been wasted in the later seasons, we end up empathising with him and his seemingly narcissistic businessman persona. Seriously though, he does get his kicks from beating up homeless people after paying them, so that's a thing. His frustration with trying to climb the corporate ladder at E Corp only to be fucked over leads to an interesting team up later on in the show. So Vera is one of the best villains I've seen on a small screen, possibly ever. He might be the best. He is very, very similar to Vas from Far Cry 3, but more fleshed out and seriously intimidating. He sort of has that unpredictable Joker-style violent feel, but not in an overt, look at me, I'm a bad guy kind of way. Boiled down, he is a small-time drug dealer with big aspirations, but make no mistakes, he's a lot more than that. I think the episode that focuses around him in Season 1 is one of my favourite Mr. Robot episodes, and even though I've seen it a few times, that last scene really gets me every single time I've seen it. It's a real gut punch of a scene, and after everything that happens during the episode, it really cements him as being a nasty piece of shit. On the flip side, he also has a weird respect for Elliot. His spiritual beliefs compel him to Elliot, and later on in the season, he comes back for what might be one of the best other episodes in the show. I do want to say more, but I can't spoil his involvement in the plot. You're just going to have to trust me, and I know it's a little bit vague, but his arc in the show is just incredible, really interesting. Lastly, we've also got Philip Price, who is the CEO of E Corp. So from Elliot's point of view, E Corp is terrible. They willfully poisoned a town water supply, where he grew up, which gave his dad cancer, and they are basically the epitome of evil. But when we meet Philip Price, we assume, perhaps rightfully so, he's going to be a bit of a ball bag. Well, funnily enough, he actually isn't too bad. He seems like an alright guy, and I think that's why Mr. Robot is great, because it could have taken the easy route and gone, rich bad man, bad. But they actually presented his character with nuance and motives, which are kind of relatable. Of course, he also has very strong indirect power over the American government, which adds an interesting, an interesting plot element to the show. And his interest in Elliot's best friend Angela also leads to some questions regarding his motives. Something I'm definitely not going to spoil here. Plus, his rivalry with White Rose, the antagonist of the series, played by B.D. Wong, is like two titans battling for power over history. Fuck, this show is good. I could spend this whole video talking about the characters, but we need to move on. Why should you watch this masterpiece? Well, I'm going to ask you some questions and you answer them in your head. Okay, so, do you like great characters? Do you like characters making decisions that actually make sense? Do you like mystery? Do you like a satisfying payoff to said mystery? Are twists and shows something that you enjoy? Do you enjoy deep character exploration that may be hard to watch? Do you enjoy being kept on your toes while watching a show? And finally, are you sick of watching the same trash Netflix shows and being let down all the time? If you answered yes to one of those questions, go watch the show. Hell, watch the first 5 minutes, and if that's not hooked you in, I don't know what will. As this is more of a vague overview, I'm considering doing some spoiler in-depth style videos, maybe going over the themes and characters more thoroughly. Also, don't worry, I haven't forgotten the Leftovers Part 2 video. I'm just having trouble getting through the second season at the moment, which it doesn't sound as bad as what it made out. I am enjoying it, it's just not quite as enjoyable as season 1. But fear not, it will happen. Anyway, thanks for watching and take care.